This is the log yard where we get the raw material to come in. Some of it's local, some comes from other parts of the world.
Right, and although it looks like a mess, it's sort of separated by species and also by, depending, certain ones are going to certain places, so they have to be kept separate so we know which logs belong to which groups.
Typically we get wood locally from tree cutters and arborists that find unusual or unique pieces, but people send us logs from locations that have sentimentality or historic significance, and that's what is in context with the trees that came from the gardens. The artistry begins with trying to visualize what's going to be the best piece created. You only have one shot to create the best piece from within, and so you're not adding, we're taking away, so we can't go back once we start, and the piece ultimately will only be as good as what nature has provided. So you're continually analyzing and studying what is the best revelation I'll be able to create from that log.
This is the Japanese maple. We've got some bigger pieces laying around the back.
Dawn redwood was sent from the gardens. We got apricot.
Now this came from the garden. This is unusual. I actually turned one yesterday. This one, it looks like it's just full of termites, but actually this wood is very hard. And so we can. Have you tried one yet?
Not yet.
It actually turns. It doesn't just start falling apart like termite wood. This really is kind of neat.
This is a limb off of the Japanese maple that was sent to us by the gardens, and I was going to turn a vase from that. A tree can grow vertically out of the ground, and I can create the piece vertically, turning it on axis, and that would be turning a bowl in this direction. Well, I can lay the log flat and go on the horizontal axis, and that would create the piece this way, and it creates a different effect entirely. The artistry of it is really deciphering which would create the best pattern, or uncover the best pattern in the piece, and so it's critical that it's studied and deciphered before you begin, because you can't go back. When I was young, my teenage years, I worked for my grandfather, and that was one of the most special times in my life, and it was fun to work alongside him and for him. But he inadvertently was teaching me at a young age just some certain aspects to artistic wood turning, and so at its infancy, it's critical that you read the material. That's ultimately your starting point, but also it's what will give you the result at the ending point. The Japanese maple, when living and healthy, it's just pure white. It's like butter. But as it decays and the decomposition process starts, there's for this one you get these gray clouds, and you start to get the black lines, which is spalting. Spalting is a bacterial condition which sets into the log of a dead or dying tree, and it's interjects lines, fault lines of decomposition, where the tree will start to break down, and it can be fascinating, and it varies in color between species. Some trees turn black, like you took a Sharpie and drew all through it. Some turn brown. It creates a really high point of interest in sculpting or turning, which is what we do, and I use turning and sculpting synonymously, but those that decomposition is what you're trying to capture and reveal it in different patterns within the turned piece.
I always enjoyed working with my hands. I like making things, just fiddling around the workshop. My father had always told me that he'd teach me wood turning if I wanted to do it, and I finally got to this stage. So I said, okay, yeah, let me learn this. And so he let me work on, pieces of his just rough pieces out, and as you slowly did more pieces, you learn and learn and learn, and that's kind of how it started. So. Let's see here. But you can just look at it and feel the moisture in here. It's just soaked in. So this piece will have to, after it's finished, it'll have to be left about this thick, and then let it dry, and it'll probably move a little bit because of the fact that it's got so much moisture in there. But if you leave it thick enough, you'll be able to turn it back around again. So the next thing is we're going to hollow this out. See what we got here. So this wood is soft in here, and that's why it broke loose here. But here's our clean that. So now we're about this thick. At this stage, for this soft of a wood, I'll leave it like this thick. Anything that doesn't look like it's really round or nice, it'll all be shaped again when it's done. So I can bring it in here, and oops, my pins. We can put it on one of these shelves here and just let it dry out. If it's really wet and they're bigger pieces, they can go in here. So, got a dehumidifier, and this is all the initial drying on larger pieces. They'll be done in here because it removes a lot more moisture a lot quicker. This just came out of the big storeroom. This is pine. It's like what we were turning earlier. As you can see, this one actually is oriented. There's a center, but you'll see on the other side there's a center right there. So this tree grew this way. So this tree, the bowl is actually sideways in the tree. That's pretty good. Starting up here. compared to when we turned on the last one, I'm taking off just a slice, just a tiny slice, so it's barely cutting into it. So now there's a little bit, I can go a little bit farther here. When I sand, we'll remove some of that, but I would rather use the tool to cut that a little lower before I start the sanding. So let's go back here and okay. Got the shape really good. There's one will smooth off a little place in here and make it go better when it's sand.
Finish that we're known for. My grandfather, my grandfather was pioneering this in the beginning. It's certainly very signature to the work, but it makes a statement. I think highlighting the natural beauty of wood. I think he did not have a roadmap or any frame of reference or guidelines. He was just pioneering everything along the way in the beginning. And Ed, my grandfather, credited with transforming wood turning into an art form. He's credited with pioneering it as an art movement. And his background was always artistically inclined. He was a professor. He was educated at Princeton with a master's in fine arts, and so he always loved the idea or the field of the creative field in general, in terms of sculpting and painting and designing. He was an architect by profession for most of his professional career before he was able to embark as an artist.
Be sure I got it all. It goes over here. Put on there. And it's doing about 8 RPM, so which is pretty slow, but that's a very good speed for this, because if there's any sort of thicker places, it's slow enough that it can even itself out. And if it stays on there, it'll just get totally perfectly smooth. So.